Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. Rangers lose to the Carolina Hurricanes, final score 2-0, and it's a fitting way to go into the Olympic break as they are shut out for the 9th time this season, 7th time at home, which is just incredible. And that's how it began. I mean, the first game of the season, they were shut out. They haven't been shut out quite as frequently, but the losses continue to pile up. They were shut out by the Carolina Hurricanes at home back on November 4th. So both home games against the Hurricanes, they don't score. Brandon Bussey, who grew up a Ranger fan, had a pretty easy night. Made 16 saves. Rangers were outshot 43-16. Jonathan Quick did a pretty nice job with 41 saves. It was definitely his best outing in a while. But also, to be fair at the same time, Carolina, it's about quantity, not so much quality. I mean, Carolina really deserved to win this game and were by far the better team. But a lot of it, you kind of get into a rhythm, you know what I mean, against a team like Carolina. And it's kind of why the Rangers have had some success against them in the playoffs and, have matched up somewhat well against them, because especially with someone like Shesterkin, it's just sort of, again, high volume. But again, at the same time, Jonathan Quick did make some pretty good saves as well. And if there's one player that can kind of hang their head somewhat high after this game, it would be Jonathan Quick. But this was the first game post Artemi Panarin trade. Now, he had missed, the 3 prior games before this, so it didn't really feel much different. You did hear some fire jury chants. I heard them mostly like with maybe 2 minutes left, right around the goalie pull, maybe a little bit before that, where it was still 1-0 Carolina. The final score being 2-0 is because of an empty net goal. But yeah, I heard a little bit in the beginning, but again, most notably towards the end of it, and expect to kind of hear that periodically. Look, crowds are going to be, maybe the numbers will still be the same, but the diehards, you're not going to see them as much. You probably weren't seeing them much anyway. But, obviously with the Rangers, you get a lot of tourists. There's still going to be a lot of fans that end up showing up, but it's just a different vibe. And so with that, my point is that the fire jury chants, they'll be way more prevalent in games they're getting absolutely killed on the scoreboard. I mean, they really were getting dominated in this game, but it was a 1-goal game pretty much throughout, right? The games where they're getting slaughtered 4-0, 5-0, things like that, I think it'll be in droves. And yeah, just the vibes of this team are couldn't be any worse. And all that to say, I'm very pleased with the continued losing, and that should stay that way despite the likelihood of Shesterkin and Fox coming back after the Olympic break. That will give the Rangers a better chance to win. They will still be one of the worst teams in the league, but there's no question about it that they're going to be better with those guys in there. So that could be the difference in some games between winning and losing. But by and large, they're going to lose a lot. They're 22, 29, and 6, 50 points in 57 games. Even the only other team that's really bad in the East is the Devils, and even as bad as they are. Now, the funny thing is, the Rangers haven't even played the Devils yet. I think there's still 3 games with the Devils starting in March. Even with that being said, the Rangers are 8 points behind them. So the Rangers are almost assured. They are assured to finish last in the Eastern Conference. And the teams you got to look at in the West, because as bad as the Rangers are, it's going to be tough to catch Vancouver. That's an 8-point difference right now. I mean, I guess crazier things have happened, but if we're being honest with ourselves, especially with Shesterkin and Fox coming back, I don't see it. There's 3 teams you really got to look at, and to varying degrees, and it's the Blackhawks, Flames, and Blues. Not to say Winnipeg isn't important either, but I do tend to believe that Winnipeg will gradually improve. Not to the point where they're going to make the playoffs, but to the point where I think that they should finish safely of the Rangers. So it's those 3 teams, Blackhawks, Flames, and Blues, where the Rangers, I think, are going to finish anywhere from 2nd worst to 5th worst, realistically. I think it's kind of what you're looking at. And that's before the lottery. But, that's kind of where my mind is. But as far as this game is concerned, Rangers hadn't played at home in a week. The last one was against the Islanders, the second of the back-to-back. And, the home numbers are amazingly bad. It's staggering, quite frankly, how bad the home numbers are. Again, 7 shutout at home. Their record is 6-15-4. So that is only 2 of those 6 wins are regulation wins. It's crazy. They have not won a regulation home game since November. And the last home game that they've oh no, sorry. The last regulation home game they won was November, because the only times that they won at home was against Nashville and St. Louis. And Nashville was really, really bad at that point. That was Rangers, and the Rangers were overdue. That was their first home win. And a St. Louis team who right now technically has a worse record than the Rangers. Both teams have played 57 games, but the Rangers have 1 more point. That's how bad the Blues are. The Blues have easily like the second worst goal differential. The only one that's even slightly worse is Vancouver. So just to give you some perspective there, that's how bad the Rangers have been. Just incredibly bad at home. And all that to say, and even though tonight there's nothing to write home about, I still think that the Rangers will have a better chance of winning home games the rest of the way. Just again, it's kind of a throwaway statement by me, but even in games that are dominated, it just in this stretch, in this recent month stretch, where Shesterkin and Fox been out, it just feels like the home games have been ones in which they have more of a chance for whatever the reason. But again, they suck regardless. This like I think they've maybe only won 3 games in 3 games since around Christmas or thereabouts. Yeah, I think that checks, because I think they had won a game right before against the Capitals. I think it's 3 games: the Winter Classic against the Panthers, the Saturday matinee game at the Flyers, and then the comeback win at the end in the overtime. Panarin's last game as a Ranger against the Bruins at home. That's it. And so quite remarkable how bad they've been. Again, Jonathan Quick was in net for this one. There were some roster changes for the Rangers, and somewhat interesting, actually. And I'm kind of glad I recorded this when I did, which is fairly after the game, but not exactly after. And in doing so, seeing a quote by Mike Sullivan kind of catches my eye a little bit. He made very clear that Brennan Othmann, who was scratching this game, it was a coach's decision, because there is a CBA rule that if you play a certain amount of games, you can't be like before the Olympic break. I think if it's like 16 out of the 20 NHL games, which Othmann was close to getting, you can't be sent down during the break. So it would have been a very easy answer to say, hey, we want to get him some reps, with Hartford. He could have easily said that. And yet he basically said that, no, Othmann, Brendan Othmann, I don't have much hope for him, but you're at a point in time in the season where you'd rather see what he can do than Anton Bleed. And that's basically what the switch was. It was Anton Bleed that came in the lineup, was on the 4th line. But yeah, Sullivan said, I think there are elements of his game, Othmann, that have to continue to improve in order for him to establish himself as an NHL player. That's all well and good, but I'd still rather him play. The Rangers haven't played since Saturday anyway. Look, it's probably somewhat of a lost cause when it comes to Brennan Othmann. And again, I don't think he's going to be really any notable NHL player when all is said and done. But, still, I don't really agree with that. And then the other switch, which makes a little more sense, but even that one has its question marks, is Vincent Iorio makes his debut with the Rangers, and Scott Morrow sits down against his former team, which reminds me, Keandre Miller made his return to Madison Square Garden. He was out injured the first time they came to MSG. Now he's in, and so he makes his return. But yeah, Iorio, I agree with that, but you could have maybe sat Vakanainen, and I understand kind of wanting to keep things aligned on the left side and right side. So I get it. That one makes more sense to me. And I know Morrow has struggled as well. He did not play well against Pittsburgh. I get it. And this one is a little bit more, I could defend this one a little bit more from Sullivan's perspective, but even still, because look, like a pairing of Morrow and Iorio for many, if that's what you did do, would be a disaster, even though Vakanainen isn't great. Vakanainen was okay in this game. He wasn't horrible. There's a little bit of a veteran presence, so to speak. So Vakanainen with Iorio, in theory, isn't as much of a train wreck. So there's lines of thing I could get. I could understand there. But still, just the idea of Othmann and Morrow, who are 2 players you want to evaluate not playing, is not a great optics look. And so, yeah, those are the changes in the lineup. Anton Bleed was called up. Connor Mackey was sent down, so Connor Mackey still has not. And really, with some of the additions, with with Fox coming back, who knows? Even with a potential Braden Schneider trade, Mackey hasn't exactly cracked the NHL lineup, but he's more of a quadruple A guy at best. He's not really much of an NHL defenseman. But yeah, so Bleed was on the fourth line with Carrick and Rempe. We'll talk about that line in just a little bit. And Brodzinski ends up on the third line with Laba and Radish. I mean, again, that's what we're talking about here. It is bad. It is really bad. Just roster-wise, it's pretty damn pathetic. And on the forwards, it's not gonna get much better, right? At least like with Fox coming back with the defense, there'll be a semblance of like, all right, like it looks like maybe serviceable. And that's kind of being kind. But for the forwards, like, and especially with Vincent Trocheck, to me, very likely to be dealt by the deadline. I mean, you get like an Adam Edstrom back, for example, right? Who is a fourth line player. Connor Sherry, who is a fourth line player. Like, that's what we're talking about here. So the forward group isn't getting any better. That's just the way it's going to be. So again, Brandon Bussey in net for Carolina, who has just been an absolute amazing story. And maybe Carolina has found their answer. I mean, what he'll do come playoff time remains to be seen, but they have found something in Brandon Bussey, who's kind of a bit of a journeyman. Grew up on Long Island, Ranger fan, pretty cool story. Right glove guy, which you don't see too often. I'm trying to think of other NHL goalies currently with the right glove. Not frequent at this time. I mean, Rick DiPietro comes to mind with the Islanders, and I'm sure there were definitely a few after him, but yeah. So he's been good, and his record's unbelievable. He is now 23-3-1 in 27 starts with the Carolina Hurricanes. That's remarkable. And the Hurricanes are on a 10-game point streak, 8-0-2 in their last 10. And yeah, just from the jump, Carolina it was business as usual. I mean, this is, you want to talk about how in the playoffs they don't come through, and the Rangers have been on the benefit of that. They have 2022, 2024. But in the regular season, they are the class of the Metro. They just are. In the last 7 or so seasons, they are basically always up towards the top, right? You think about this Metro division, while they don't have the playoff success, my money's on them come regular season, that's for sure. And yet again, that comes to fruition. And, Carolina's lineup was, I'd say, more whole than I've seen in the previous 3 games. And there's probably some significant pieces that are still out that I apologize that I'm not discussing here, but, just seeing like a Jacob Slavin back in there, that's obviously big. He missed a large portion of the season. So yeah, basically Carolina gets off to a good start here. And at 6:26, the one non-empty net goal of the game is Andrei Svechnikov, scoring his 21st goal of the season, assisted by Jankowski. This is where the fourth line is going off the ice. It's a good hustle play by Jankowski to kind of beat Gavrikov to it. Svechnikov keeps it in, makes an easy move around Rempe and scores past Jonathan Quick. Matt Rempe has been just really, really bad. There's no way around it. And whatever the reason may be, and there could be some validity as to why he hasn't done well. Boy, has Matt Rempe just not been anywhere near the player that he was, I'll say, as recently as the beginning of the season. Look, Matt Rempe was never going to be something amazing. I've had my doubts on him, but I really, I really thought that he, I don't know if you want to say turned a corner, but it seemed like he was someone that had some success in the fourth line, where maybe he wasn't chipping in much offense, but he was more than a fighter. And now he can't even fight with the thumb situation. And I don't know. He could certainly use a real reset with this Olympic break, but it's been a disappointment what Matt Rempe has provided. Let's just call it as it is, right? Because I think, he is a very widely, like, there's division. I think there's people that love Matt Rempe, and I think there's people that hate Matt Rempe. It's just the way that it is. I guess I kind of fall somewhere in the middle, but I really did see what he was bringing to the table after being, skeptical. But yeah, especially if easily moves around him as his line mates were leaving the ice. Bleed and Carrick left. Miller and Zibanejad replaced them, and Rempe was still on. And again, good hustle play by Jankowski, where the puck goes by Braden Schneider in the neutral zone, Jankowski just gets a stick on it to beat Gavrikov. Svechnikov keeps it in and scores past Quick. So I wanted to make a big mention of that goal because it was the only non-internet goal of the game. Well, than Carolina. And then Carolina takes their 2 penalties of the game. Keandre Miller cross-checks Vincent Trocheck, former teammates, of course, and Trocheck actually used to be on Carolina himself, but Keandre, in his return to Madison Garden, takes that penalty. Carolina kills it off with relative ease. And then at 12:50, Taylor Hall trips Will Borgen, and that as well. The Rangers, in some chances, probably some of their best chances, I guess, technically were on the power play in that first period, but ultimately, Carolina's penalty kill gets the job done. Those are the only 2 power plays the Rangers have all game, and Carolina outshot the Rangers 10-6 in the first, which is actually the closest disparity of the periods, and even that period really was heavily Carolina, and then the power plays kind of shifted the momentum slightly. So the Hurricanes take that one can lead in the second. And then the second period was a period where the Hurricanes really, really dominated the Rangers. The puck felt like it was the Rangers' zone the whole time, and give Jonathan Quick credit for keeping the Rangers in it. Made some pretty big saves along the way, but they were just peppering him with shots. And a bad turnover by, I believe it was Will Cooley, leads to Vladislav Gavrikov having to interfere with Jordan Martinook at 5:03. Rangers kill it off. Give the Rangers penalty kill credit. They did a pretty good job in this game because the Rangers faced more adversity later in the period. 18-19, Gavrikov takes another penalty, holds Taylor Hall. And with 5 seconds left in the period and about 25 seconds left on that power play, Trocheck cross-checks Jordan Staal, his former teammate in Carolina. So there's 20 seconds to start in the third period of a 5-on-3 for the Hurricanes. And it's always tough to kind of get going on the power play at the beginning of the period. So I kind of felt like unless they set up really quickly, which they didn't, that was going to go by the wayside. It did. And then the Trocheck penalty ended as well. So the Rangers were able to kill off those penalties. The Rangers PK goes perfect, a 3-for-3 in the second period and going into the third. And then the third period, it was just Carolina just really had control of this thing. Rangers it was one shot away. Not to say there weren't some opportunities. I think Lafreniere had a good chance, but Bussy was up to the task. I mean, Zibanejad earlier on, and that might have been in the power play, had an opportunity, but just not a whole hell of a lot going on for the Rangers. I guess Vincent Iorio's debut was fine, a little bit shaky. There were some turnovers on his part that I noticed, but he played 14 minutes and 15 seconds, and, ends up, not, because again, there was only one goal, non-empty net, and he wasn't on for that one. Like we said, it was Gavrikov and Schneider at that time, so Aureo goes even. But yeah, like nothing to write home about at all. And we'll see what he can do the rest of the way. But remember, he was waived twice, so expectations for sure need to be tempered. But hey, it's a free minor asset, so you may as well see what you got. So yeah, again, third period, Carolina just doing what they do, clogging up the neutral zone. Rangers having a tough time generating much of anything. And ultimately, and again, another fitting way to go into the break, it's an empty net goal to seal it. Jordan Staal, 15th goal of the season from Ehlers and Blake at 19:06. What happens here is Gavrikov tries to get it to Trocheck in the neutral zone. Trocheck is unable to handle it. And again, like Vincent Trocheck, I think it's been very disappointing as to what he's brought to the table. And I think you're looking at him as the next likely Ranger to go. If I had to guess, he would be the highest percentage chance. Maybe he's not necessarily the next guy to go, but if you told me there's one Ranger player that gets dealt of significance, I think it would be Trocheck. So, who's headed to the Olympics. But yeah, Ehlers ends up getting the puck, passes it off to Jackson Blake, son of Jason Blake. And Blake takes it in, gives it back to Ehlers. Ehlers goes behind the net, past Trocheck, and right in front of Staal to tap it into the empty net. And Carolina wins by a final score of 2-0. Again, Jonathan Quick did what he could to keep him in it, but the Rangers are shut out at home for the 7th time this season and 9th overall. It's just remarkable, and that's one away from the franchise record. 10 is the most times they've been shut out. So really, again, those home numbers and the shutouts are just something that's just started from the beginning, and it's never going away. And I don't see it going away based on this roster. And it's only going to get worse. But hey, at this point, losses are the best thing for this team. There isn't a whole lot to cling on to. There isn't. So again, all there is just moving as far down the standings as possible and hoping you get lucky when it comes to either the lottery or just hitting on a draft pick, which has been such a problem for the Rangers. I agree that's the real thing as well. But, hopefully they can find their way. But yeah, so now we go to the Olympics. Rangers will be off for 3 weeks, and three Rangers are headed to the Olympics. Miller and Trocheck for Team USA, Zibanejad for Team Sweden. So not a crazy amount of representation for the Rangers. Again, just two teams. Now, obviously, if Team Russia were in the Olympics, it'd be a different story, right? Now, I know Shesterkin's hurt, but maybe things would be different if that were in play. Gavrikov, I think, would be a likely candidate to be on the team. Obviously, Panarin was just traded. So there is that caveat as well. But I'm going to try to record some episodes. I don't have an exact plan yet, but I think for the Olympics, I think more likely towards the end of the tournament, more likely towards the knockout stage, maybe like post preliminary rounds to see kind of the way things stack up. But I would like to touch on it, hopefully with a bit of a Rangers touch to it, right? Like that would be ideal to talk about the three Rangers that are in it. And again, obviously Mike Sullivan, I should have mentioned he's the head coach of Team USA. Chris Drury's an assistant GM. David Quinn's an assistant coach. So a lot of Ranger representation, but it's hard to be proud of that at all, given these players. And again, for me, if Adam Fox was in there, that I would have taken more of a liking to. Again, just I know he wasn't drafted by the Rangers, but grew up a Ranger fan. That's the only NHL team that he's been on. So like that, I don't know, but the way things are, Miller and Trocheck, it's hard to get behind it right now. It's just, kind of glad the Rangers aren't playing at this point. So we'll see what happens. And really the biggest thing is I hope that Vincent Trocheck does not get hurt. Knowing that Zibanejad and Miller are highly unlikely to be dealt. Maybe Zibanejad has a change of heart and wants to waive his no move. But even if that does happen, I don't think that'll be mid-season. It's Trocheck that's the big one. So honestly, more than anything, I'm hoping that Vincent Trocheck stays healthy. And look, last year he got kind of nicked up in the Four Nations tournament. I think he had, maybe it was a re-aggravation, but I remember it was a finger or some hand situation that he had last season. So that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. But look, don't be surprised, even if it's not effectiveness, Miller and Trocheck, and it's a low bar, they're probably going to be playing way more all out than they have been for the Rangers. And take that as it will. I'm not saying they're going to perform well, but I could see them going that extra mile, the extra effort that we have not seen. And it's disappointing because both the players are capable of it, especially like Trocheck as a Ranger. He just seems off. He seems like, I don't know if checked out's the right word, shell-shocked, but it hasn't been the same as we've seen in previous seasons. So again, Rangers head to the Olympic break in a extremely fitting way, kind of starts the season how it ends here at this point in time. And again, the New York Rangers have now played 57 games. So 25 to go, which is crazy. 25 more games of this team. 22, 29, and 6, 6, 15, and 4 at home, 7 shutouts at home, 9 overall. They lose the Carolina Hurricanes by a score of 2-0 at Madison Square Garden, and they will not play again for another 3 weeks. And we will see what the Olympic break holds.